Hey, you're listening to a Bible Brodown podcast, a member of the Trinity Commission. This is where brothers come together to sharpen one another so we can rightly divide the Word of God. I'm Matt.
And this is Billy. So, you had some Minicast idea that you wanted to talk about. What was that idea?
I was thinking about talking about the more maybe pop culture kind of demon like thoughts. Modern, ghosty demon. So you mentioned Ghost Hunters or whatever the latest TV.
They're all over.
All over, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't like watching them, honestly. They freak me out. They're probably fake, but I'm like, what if they're not? Y'all are stupid. Don't go in there.
What I like watching people get scared. And it's like the most funny thing when three people all of a sudden you can actually like see that they're actually like scared, like little, I guess I shouldn't use words like that. Scared like little cats. I won't refer to a specific sex or anything.
They were scared like babies. And to an extent that is fun, but still I get the heebie-jeebies a little bit when I'm like, okay, if there is a thing talking in the dark that you're trying to communicate with your little stupid, it's you're running a risk there.
So Matt and I, when we visited Matt back years ago when we were on our road trip, we stopped at Matt's place, and him and his wife, and me and my wife, we all went and watched Paranormal Activity 2. Right. And
those are so dang scary.
And then spent the next like 4 hours like outside talking because we were too like hyped up to do anything else. Like
drinking coffee.
I remember we were talking and my wife had to go to the bathroom and she asked Heather to go with her because she didn't want to be alone in the bathroom. So,
is that why girls go to the bathroom together?
I don't know, but just fast forward now. I am not able to watch those now. Like I just can't. Like I don't know how I watched them before because as soon as I just start, I'm like I can't do it anymore. Maybe I'm just getting old and yeah.
Yeah, kids ruined that for me. Once I had kids and I was a dad and I was like responsible for protecting this household, I was like, yo, I don't want anything extra. I mean, not that, we live in a safe town, but still like, So one of the things I want to mention actually was, can you invite a demon into your home? Specifically, I'm thinking, Paranormal Activity would have been, they used a Ouija board and it worked, I guess. And so some kind of creature, angel, whatever, invaded their space.
Right. That's definitely a pulp culture thing where like you can there might be a spirit or a demon attached to a certain object because that object was used by Attila the Hun or whoever and he killed hundreds of people and now that object is demon possessed and evil and carries or that house, all these things happen and there's a demon in there or there's a portal in that house. It kind of like begs the question or makes you think, well, if you can invite a demon in a house, could they not get there before? Or are they like vampires where they can't come in unless you invite them in?
I prefer to think they're like vampires unless I invite them in there.
Right. I do think, however, that you cannot, I don't think going with the whole like free will kind of idea that demons can possess anyone who is unwilling.
So you think the accounts of the little girl in the Bible whose mom went to appeal? I mean,
at a you never know how old that person was either. Teens do a lot of stupid stuff like play with Ouija boards when their parents aren't watching. I also think that there are things, and this is like just personal, and it could be pop culture or biblical pop culture. Biblical tradition,
Bible pop,
where you can like get yourself in various states, like with drugs and such, where your inhibitions are now gone, which then allows for that kind of thing. So those are just things that I've heard and seen and such.
Yeah, I have heard of out of body experiences opening people up to through drugs, opening people up to possession or attack or whatever. And these are people who are now Christians, and I wish I could remember who specifically it was, but people who are now Christians looking back on things that had happened to them. But yeah, I do think that there is. So I always come back to the witch of whatever that's
Endor.
Saul. Yeah, that Saul went to conjure up this Elohim of this ghost of Samuel. And if that's possible, someone could. I don't see why not put out some kind of spiritual invitation for a fallen angel or demon, whatever you want to call it. That seems like a legitimate thing that could be done. I think it would amount to prayer to that being, right? Whereas we know only to pray to God, not to Mary or anybody else.
Yeah. People talk about, I think from Job, having a hedge of protection, where God and Satan are talking, and God says, consider Job. God's the one that initiates this, by the way. And he's like, well, yeah, he's all good and stuff because you've put a hedge of, he says, have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? So there was like this protection, and makes me think of like the C.S. Lewis, or not C.S. Lewis, the Peretti books, where the pastor of that little town, there was the hedge of protection was seen as like there were angels who like were sitting at his house and like not allowing any demons in there.
Yeah. I'm like, God, you build a wall.
Right.
Go for it.
Or the Elijah and his servant, right? They had of this war coming. They had a protection of like these chariots of fire all around them. That's what I want.
Yeah, the heavenly host. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I do think there's definitely protection for believers or Christians.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many. So in terms of inviting or conjuring a demon, just public service announcement, don't do it. Okay, right. If you're listening to this and you're like, I wonder how that works, don't. I wouldn't even look up the recipe. What do you the thing, I don't know. Don't. We could speculate about it, but don't. That's one of those. And this is when I was studying, I try to keep it strictly biblical, because there is so much online and there's so much bad stuff you can find just by a quick Google search that you should probably just avoid it, honestly. But one of the things that I'm familiar with, because conspiracies and that's, I dig it, is I think it was Aleister Crowley and who's the L. Ron Hubbard, and one other guy. L. Ron Hubbard is the dude who started Scientology, right? And they supposedly conjured up this little alien being looking dude that was a demon. That's what they knew it as. And you hear stories like that and you're like, yeah, but they were crazy, so that probably didn't happen. But on the other hand, why not? These were exceptionally wicked men. One of them started the Satanist church movement. The other one started Scientology, which is insane. And why is it out of, I don't know, the idea that pop culture just immediately dismisses things like that is, that's not possible. I think it goes back to the Sun Tzu quote that we had on Monday, which is you need to know your enemy, and that is possible, and you shouldn't fool around with that kind of stuff.
Made me think this whole like idea of pop culture and things like that, and our episode last Monday on angels or fallen angels, demons, information, things like that. There's a lot of pop culture, or a lot of cultural and historical accounts, whether they're true or not, on demons and or beings, giving people information. And it makes me think of Tesla, and supposedly many of his ideas, from what my understanding is, he wrote about in his journal, he did from a vision, from hearing this information from an angel or some kind of spiritual being.
World War II, Werner von Braun, he claims to have received ideas from something else. He says he got it. However that works. There were Nazis who said the same thing. This really goes off into conspiracy stuff, but it was the what was the society that basically helped find Hitler? It was I can't remember it. Anyway,
yeah,
they were deep into trying to contact these spiritual beings and receive information from them, and that's gonna drive me crazy until I remember who it is.
The Thule Society.
Say it again.
The Thule?
Spell it.
Thule? Thule Society?
No, that's not
No?
it. That's not.
No, that's not it either. Yeah. And that whole, you just mentioned him, Tesla. I've heard of other accounts, and that ties back to the Book of Enoch, where it says that these watchers are the ones that gave men like the knowledge of war instruments and makeup and medicines and drugs,
Pharmacy,
and,
yeah.
and all this stuff. And kind of ties into what you said about they have more understanding of like the physical world and how things work than we do, right? Like genetic manipulation or whatever, or how to tap into, the human potential and things like that.
Yeah, right. I mean, and we're getting way off it, but hey, this is October. You just
and this is a mini.
It's weird for reason. Yeah, that's exactly it. The idea of CRISPR. You're familiar with CRISPR, right?
Yes.
Yeah, gene editing and like simple gene editing. Not. Why did that just pop up all of a sudden? The idea that you could. I don't know. Just CRISPR. If you want to know more about it, just Google it. And there's plenty of like watchdog videos out there, like warning people about CRISPR. It could be potentially a cure for cancer. It could be something that fixes Alzheimer's. It could be something that's fantastic,
right?
But it could also be absolutely terrible. So, people, I think people can legitimately come up with these ideas. I'm not trying to like belittle how smart some of these scientists are, but that doesn't mean that if you are against God. And you want to somehow manipulate the population a certain direction, then dropping the right piece of knowledge to the right scientist in the right situation could blow that up. Could definitely aid your cause, and it's you never have to expose yourself. So thinking about it like a war, and really an intelligence war, kind of a Cold War more than it is flat out hostilities at the moment, is I think the right way to go, and you can kind of imagine that if you wanted to manipulate I think take the United States for instance. This is getting off into spiritual warfare, but take the United States for instance. I think one of the most dangerous traps a culture can fall into is prosperity. The more money you have, the less need you feel to depend on God,
right? And
the more you depend on yourself, and when something comes up. If your government's really prosperous and they're offering to take care of your needs, then again, why do you need to depend on God? You've got the government. You're so smart because you've got all these higher institutions of learning. You've got all these degrees and everything else. And I just think that is something that, again, Cold War, they implement this. They help boost our technology. They help boost our production.
Right.
And in the meantime, we don't bother to turn to God for anything because they're...
Yeah, you think about war and even how we fight it. You got to think that the enemy is much better at it than we are. Think about a town that has, and let's call that town a kingdom. There's loyal followers in that town who are loyal and honorable and following what the king says. But there's also other people in that town who are just kind of there, right? They become the people, from the opposing kingdom. They'll go into that town and find those people who are just there. They're not really a loyal follower, and then manipulate them to, get information, help bring things down, do bad things. They'll also look for those people who may be loyal, but just not very, very loyal to the kingdom. So, this is my point is like, that's like speaking of, you have believers and unbelievers on the world, and these unbelievers, are there, and they can be, manipulated by the enemy and used to do various things. And like Matt was saying, be given information to help bring, for the cause of the other kingdom. And you can also put in disinformation or half truths. So those people who are actually believers, it's kind of like what's the warfare? Misinformation, where you drop pamphlets and provide misinformation. There's what's it called? Where there's a movie about
propaganda.
It. Yeah, propaganda, right? And truths that aren't really true. And that's so you get, not only do you have the enemy like their own side doing things, but they also are putting misinformation in various truths, and you see the division among God's people, right? Which is one of the, in Sun Tzu, if you want to defeat the enemy, you separate them, right, into smaller pieces. So
first, Vril Society, VR, ILL, Vril Society. That's who it was. Remembered it. Nailed it. Second, the idea of propaganda is demon possession propaganda or entertainment? What's the deal with that? I mean, I can't imagine they're like actually physically benefiting it from it in some way, like a vampire. I'm thinking it's when you talk about propaganda, fear, it can be a tremendous motivator. As in, don't mess with our side because we can do this crazy thing to these people. Is that what's going on there, or are they just doing it because they need entertainment? Why did they want to go into the pigs?
Yeah, do demons have the authority or ability to take on and manipulate the real world without doing that? Whereas you see angels appear and interact, but that's by God's direction. Do they have the ability to do that besides taking on possession?
Job, you said that they knocked a house down on some people.
Right.
But that was permitted.
Right. One of the theories of Dr. Luganbill that we've mentioned before, a Greek and Hebrew scholar, is that in order for them, because they're spiritual beings, right, and when they possess, they then get to experience those physical senses and desires that we have with flesh, like touch and taste and things like that,
and sexual desire,
mm-hmm.
which fits with the whole Jude
Right.
7 and all that. Yeah, Genesis 6. Oh man, we have gone all over the place. What do we even start talking about? I don't
know. Can they be invited into your house and pop culture?
Yeah, right.
Well, that was all pop culture.
Well, in the idea of spiritual warfare, it's hard to get around. And as you think about it, and you think, just what is possible with these beings who are ancient compared to us,
Mm-hmm.
who are they have a much better understanding of our reality than we do. They have
they definitely understand the bigger picture more than we do.
Yeah, they're extremely intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Just what is possible by them, pretty much anything you can think of. But we always have to remember they fear God.
Right.
Maybe they don't submit to him, but they certainly fear him, and they have to do what he commands. In the case of Jesus confronting these demons, they're scared of him.
Yeah, and they know their judgment's coming.
Right.
Right.
So at the end of the day, if you do find yourself wondering about this subject and you're thinking about it, fear is not one of the things you need to feel.
Right.
We shouldn't fear the any being who can destroy our body. We should be on the side of the being who can destroy both body and soul. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So God wins. We're on his team, and we don't need to fear all these other things. Although it's worth not being caught by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
You think through them. Expect, as a strategist would, expect different attacks, ways they can do it.
Put on the armor of God.
That's it. Like a knight.
Mm-hmm.
Armor up.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that was fun. I know people really enjoy the minis because it's little tidbits of sometimes they're deep theological ones that are just short. Sometimes they're like this, where they're just like
weird.
Yeah. Very Matthew-esque.
Oh man, this is how my brain works, man.
All right, brothers. Till next time.
Monday.
Yep.
God bless.
God bless.